In 2023, semiconductors accounted for roughly 18.9% of all South Korean exports, according to the Korea International Trade Association. That is nearly $1 in $5 Korea earns from selling things to the world, coming from a single industry. No other OECD economy is this exposed to one product category. So when AI exploded demand for chips, and then a global glut crashed memory prices, the question became urgent. Is Korea's dominance in chips a fortress or a trap? The answer turns out to be both. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix together controlled roughly 65 to 70% of global DRAM production as of 2023, according to market research firm TrendForce. DRAM is the fast access memory inside every server, smartphone, and AI training cluster on the planet. SK Hynix alone supplies approximately 50% of the high bandwidth memory, known as HBM, used inside Nvidia's most advanced AI chips, according to reporting from Bloomberg and the Financial Times. Samsung's semiconductor division posted an operating loss of roughly 14.88 trillion Korean won in 2023, its worst chip result in over a decade, as memory prices collapsed during the post-pandemic correction, per Samsung's own earnings disclosures. Yet by the second half of 2024, the cycle turned again. HBM demand from AI data centers drove SK Hynix to record quarterly profits. These two numbers, a 14 trillion won loss and then record profits within 18 months, tell you everything about how violently this industry breathes. Korea did not stumble into chip dominance. It was a deliberate industrial policy decision made under enormous risk. In the 1980s, Samsung chairman Lee Byung-chul committed to DRAM manufacturing at a moment when Japanese firms like Hitachi and NEC owned the market. The Korean government supported the push through directed credit and export incentives. Korean firms absorbed years of losses to achieve the scale that would eventually undercut Japanese rivals on price. This strategy, known in economic literature as picking winners, succeeded partly because memory chips are a commodity business, where scale and yield improvement compound over time. The firm that builds the most wafers learns the fastest. By the 2000s, Japan's share had collapsed and Korea's had risen. Then came the second structural advantage: geography and supply chain density. Samsung and SK Hynix operate their largest fabs in Gyeonggi Province, within roughly an hour of each other, creating a supplier ecosystem, specialized chemicals, gases, equipment servicing, that no other country has replicated at the same density, according to analysis published by the Boston Consulting Group. The concentration that made Korea powerful now makes it brittle in specific ways. First, Korea does not make the machines that make the chips. ASML, the Dutch firm, holds a near monopoly on the extreme ultraviolet lithography equipment that every leading-edge fab requires, and export controls now mean that geopolitical decisions in The Hague can reshape a Korean fab's roadmap overnight. Second, TSMC in Taiwan has pulled decisively ahead in logic chips, the processors and AI accelerators, leaving Korea heavily reliant on memory just as the highest margin AI chip work concentrates in logic. Samsung's foundry business, which competes directly with TSMC, held only around 12 to 13% of the global foundry market share in 2023, compared to TSMC's roughly 60% per TrendForce. Third, the United States CHIPS Act and parallel subsidies from Japan and the European Union are reshaping where fabs get built, forcing Samsung and SK Hynix to invest heavily outside Korea, in Texas and Indiana respectively, which strains capital budgets already stretched by the memory down cycle. Korea's chip story is ultimately a story about the price of specialization. Extreme focus on one technology created extraordinary national wealth and extraordinary national exposure. The same dynamic plays out elsewhere. Dutch dominance in lithography, Taiwanese dominance in logic fabrication, American dominance in chip design software. Every node of the semiconductor supply chain is held by a surprisingly small number of actors in a surprisingly small number of places. What Korea demonstrates is that winning a node in this chain requires decades of patient capital, tolerance for loss, and geographic clustering that cannot simply be legislated into existence. The United States CHIPS Act and European subsidies can move fabs, but moving fabs does not instantly move the knowledge networks around them. For any country watching its own strategic industries, the Korean example poses a quiet, uncomfortable question. How much concentration is strength and how much is the setup for a very large single point of failure?